The Crux with Paul Stone. Thank you for coming back. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully I'll have something to offer. I wanted to talk about Epstein. You know, I've been tracking this one for a while. I haven't commented on it. I've seen the political, hooey that goes on probably in any government, centralized government, the town that, I was to say, whether it's London or Paris or Moscow or wherever, Beijing, God only knows what, that's a full-blown communist country. You can't even, they just put you in jail. And corruption stuff, they just hide it in Beijing, from what I read. May not be true. Seems to be, though. Seems to be that corruption has always existed. I think it shows up a great deal when people obviously misuse their power. They have buttons and levers they can push that others can't and make things happen. And yeah, that can be for sale. And then there's the other type of corruption. There's many types, but that's a big one. And then there's the other one where, oh my God, we got to keep that that can't come out. We got to keep that a secret. And that's obviously what we're dealing with Epstein. And we can speculate on why. And it just distracts us. And that's what I say. I say it's another distraction, keeping me from realizing that life's happening where my feet are. It's not my life's not happening in D.C. A lot of stuff that is happening in D.C. that affects our lives, yes, the oppression, the suppression, the money printing, the inflation, everyone's miserable, their earnings don't overwhelm their bills. That's been going on for decades. To me, that's freaking evil. Evil. I got a book coming out about it. It actually just came out a little ways back, 1971. You can get it on Amazon. It will literally explain. I document for you what happened. And this is, I'll get back to Epstein in a second, but it's just another symptom. But here's what's been happening that no one's noticed. And that's why the book is valuable to you. That's not that I sell books. I'm proud to be an author. It did hit just in its second day of being out on Amazon. #1 top new release. I'm proud of that, but it's quite a message. It's going to cover why racism seems more extreme today than when Martin Luther King was walking around. It's going to cover, for the first time in human history, society anesthetizes itself with drugs. It's going to cover the death of the American family. It's going to cover why all the factories closed in America, the greatest stuff, quality stuff made on the planet, those factories closed, not because people ran out of demanding the best stuff made in the world, because our politicians allowed those factories to go to the cheap labor world in China and outside of America, in countries like India and Mexico. So what's the commonality in all that? Whoa. How can you be so sure, Paul? How do you know? Because here's what I know. If we're just applying the laws of physics, Newton, that an object in motion tends to stay in motion forever. Unless what? It's interfered with. So you shoot a bullet up into the sky, it gets past the atmosphere. I mean, it won't, but if it got past the atmosphere, got into free space, it would go on that exact same course forever, unless something interacted with it. It ran into a planet or a meteor or asteroid hit it, any space debris, something, anything. The bullet's physical and so am I. So physical worlds, things that are in motion, tend to stay in motion forever. And we look back over humanity, all of it. There were locales where doing drugs was prevalent, but the whole country didn't. No one would want to do fentanyl 100 years ago. I mean, they can, the head of a pin is enough to kill you or get you high for a long time. No one would want to risk that. Why? Because this was precious. My shot here, my 80 years, whatever I end up with, it was precious, even if it was in a bit of struggle. Even if it was, I wasn't going to be able to buy a new Cadillac every couple years. But the guy that owned the bank got to. And the woman that owned the factory got to. Certain people in every town got to buy a Cadillac every couple of years. But none of us were envious of that. That was their family thing, or they, had the chutzpah to put some stuff together and raise some money and get some investors and I don't know, whatever, put their little store together, put their little business together. And most of us were just, all right, working in the factory. We used to make John Deeres here. John Deere, Harleys. Used to make every piece of them here in America. Caterpillar. Craftsman. All of that stuff was founded here, made here, sold outside the world because it was the highest quality stuff. So what could cause a country on such an incredible trajectory to change? It was decisions made in Washington. It was a disreality. The book will explain, literally show you, bald-faced, that a humanity in motion is going to tend to stay in motion unless something interferes with it. We didn't interfere with ourselves. We didn't suddenly start, approving this junk that ends up in our food that caused our brains to turn to glue. And I don't know if anyone's brains have turned to glue from what they eat, but what I'm saying is there's nothing that we've done to sully the quality of the human being where it is now incompetent to exist in its surroundings without outside help, without handouts. But it does today. And what changed? You and I didn't change, folks. You and I didn't change. The kids didn't change. But a lot of the pressures and the stresses that have never been hoisted upon a society before have changed. They are here now than they never used to be. And the ones that did used to come were temporary. The plague, the flood, the drought, the crazy king, the wars, temporary. They weren't permanent all the time, all day, never relinquishing its grip, its destructive pressure against a magical being. So when we look at Epstein, what is it? Okay, so let's say they finally just turn everything over. Oh, there's been so much. Okay, you guys screamed for 117 days straight, and that's our limit, so we're just going to turn everything over. What would it do? Worst case, let's say the president was there. Let's say there's some weird pictures. He's elected. He's already in power. He's already, in my opinion, doing a great job. I mean, don't start thinking that there's going to find some candidate that does a perfect job at president. It's not possible. It's not possible. There is no perfection, I don't know, in anything. I mean, I've eaten some things that were perfect. And I'm married to something perfect. Hopefully she's watching. But where is perfect where's the perfect CEO? Where's the perfect whatever? Where's the perfect president? Where was the one that was perfect? Maybe a whole bunch of people will say there was one, but you could find people that said that person wasn't a perfect president. So we know about Epstein. What is it? There's pedophilia going on. There's sickness going on. Was there sickness like that 1,000 years ago? Yeah. Well, 2,000 years ago? Yeah. So maybe it's more prevalent today. I'm definitely saying best guess. Done a bunch of research to get the book out. 1971. Definitely willing to say there's a hell of a lot more of it today than ever was before. There's a hell of a lot more violence today than there was before. There's a hell of a lot more poor people today than there was before. The extremes between those with and the gap between those with not much is bigger than ever before. I mean, our government has created so much stupid money that shouldn't be in our system, in our financial world, that there's a few people now that are worth like $500 billion. Does that sound like we're living in a reality, a one that's tethered to reality? $500 billion and this is no shame on Elon Musk, it's just a measuring point that Tesla offered him a pay package where he would get paid $1 trillion over whatever period of time. $1 trillion? Is that how cheap money's become today? These are extremes. Global warming, pedophilia, sex trafficking, violence, substance abuse, human abuse, all at, I gotta believe, pegging the spectrum on, like on a per capita basis. If it happens 1 out of 10,000 times, autism, right? That we didn't have autism 30 years ago. An object in motion tends to argue all you want. Physics is going to win. An object in motion tends to stay in motion unless it's interfered with. So if there's no autism, and all of a sudden, I think I've read recently, I'm just going to water it down, but I think it was 1 out of 4. Let's say it's 1 out of 40. My God, if it is 1 out of 40, that's a lot. That's what I mean. Like, humanity isn't degrading. We aren't creating more Down syndrome. We aren't creating more autism because something's wrong in the genes or in the baby making process. Where does that happen? Where does the course that this human was on divert to a different course? What intersected with that? It's got to be something that has to do with something that is being put in the being. Is that an injection? Is it in the preservative? Is it in the chemical arrangement, the technological creation of what's being put in you? He's telling me that we're all just crazy to ask these difficult questions. That's where things start to really go wrong. It's suddenly we need answers to stuff that just doesn't mean anything because we aren't getting answers to the stuff that does. By who? By our leadership. So we can say, well, yeah, these leaders are terrible. They're shaming us. They obfuscate this COVID jab stuff, COVID itself, not being able to call it what it was, and then the stupid leadership in the decades previous to COVID that allowed all of our medicines to be made in China, so much of our tech to be made over there. All the rare earth minerals are certainly refined there. I believe China has 90%. And China's just doing what it's doing, right? We can't even really be mad at China. Our stupid politicians gave them the wealth that they possess, gave them the power that they can wield. Our stupid government is the one helping create the system that finances their march towards techno-dominant communist rule around the world. They may have had ideas to do that kind of stuff, but they were never going to have the resources to do it with unless our leadership gave them that shot. We didn't vote to close 74,000 manufacturing firms in this country since 1990. We didn't vote to make China a favored trade nation status. Only one country gets that. And what does that mean? That means there's no tariffs on anything coming from China to America. It's essentially what it meant. Not only were we allowing the factories to go set up, the companies to set up their factories in China and gut the American worker, gut the American family, set those kids on raising themselves because now moms can't be moms if they wanted to. They have to work. You need 2 incomes in the household. The kids raise themselves. Misery is everywhere. Guess what the mind will do when it can't get rid of the misery it's drowning in? Do a line, do a bong hit, shoot something, eat something, fight, kill. Need more therapy, not get that therapy, get even sicker and worse, take that out physically. It's so simple. We all want to scream and yell about what's behind the Epstein tapes. What would it change? What would it change? If you literally saw images of a sitting president doing the sickest stuff, watch some video of it, would that be impeachable? Then what? So all of the politicians that you elected are in Washington, and they're maybe all pretty much the same. And many of them, maybe they run on this motto of change. I'm going to change something, change this, change that. And what changes? You're the ones that have to change. We have to no longer be electing anyone that might have had something to do with Pedophilia Island. That's on us. And the candidates that can get elected are the ones that are going to run based on what we're sending them as far as signals goes. Oh, this is the matrix of the background that this candidate needs to have that mirrors a big giant swath of the country that will win the ticket and win the seat. If we were of wanting different stuff as a group, then the money would be running a different type of candidate with a different background and matrix of whatever parts kind of fit on the abortion thing and the women's rights things and the immigration things and the foreign policy things and all that stuff. What we are interested in is what's being reflected back to us in the way of candidates. I've said it before, Mandami. I think it's a joke. I think that's ridiculous to think that something's going to get improved through handouts. Everything the government's been coming up with has been one form or another of a handout. They're printing money to pay the bills they don't have the money to pay, which is in the way a handout, because you get to keep your Social Security, you get to keep your Medicaid and your Medicare, you get to keep $1 trillion a year military, you get $1 trillion a year on the interest on the debt alone, you get to not go bankrupt. That's a freaking handout. The money is coming from a disreality, but here's where it's showing up in reality. Buy the book. You'll understand why racism seems more extreme today than ever before. You'll understand that for the first time in human history, something as magical as this and as magical as you is so stressed out and so miserable and can't find peace that the only attempt you might find for obtaining a little bit of it, and some humor hopefully, and maybe some wonderful memories occasionally, will be through drugs. That is what's been happening. The degrading of our ability to be in the pursuit of happiness by the actions that happened of people we elected. We elected. We put them there. Maybe no one votes in the midterms. Just no one votes. Yeah, they can have their stupid election. Elect the same kind of people that have been coming to Washington for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. What's going to change? Do you really think your vote has a shot at changing anything they've been doing for a few decades? It does not. Evidenced by the fact it has yet to. Evidenced by the grandest ass kicker ever to probably walk into the White House since Roosevelt in Donald J. Trump is going to be able to make some things appear different, function different, give the country a shot at being different because he is doing different stuff than what other politicians have brought to the table, irritating tons of folks, wondering if he's going too far. I'm for all that. But what really needs to change to completely change the type of candidate that is running is us. We're the ones. We are not frickin' victims. This isn't happening to us. A lot of it is, but in a way, we have become distracted that suddenly Epstein is this giant subject where we got promised something during a campaign and it wasn't delivered on after the election. Oh, wow. What? Is the island still functioning? Are people still getting their lives wrecked because of what's going on that sickening place? Is we're just ready to get our shame guns out and just start shooting everyone with shame that we possibly can find? Is that because shame's happening to us? Is that because it's so hard to be parents today? The kids end up feeling, that's what they end up feeling a great deal of? That no one's listening, the flag burning's going on, and everyone's just trying to scream louder than the other one so they could finally be heard? That is not what beats in the heart of America. America pays attention. America is grounded in truths. America was the creation of recognizing what monarchies are like and what socialism and communism and fascism are like. And we didn't want to be any of that. There's a funny saying, democracy is literally the worst form of government unless you compare it to your other choices. No government is going to be great. I think our government that started with America in the late 1700s was probably the greatest place to be because they left you alone. And there was always going to be stuff we had to struggle with. There was always going to be crime, some asshole running by and taking your horses at night. Kids are going to get sick. Mothers dying at childbirth. Kids dying at childbirth. It's just, when has that not been part of the tapestry of our story? But all the overcoming and all the unity townsfolk felt knowing each other, right? How many neighbors do you know today? That was not the case. That's a form of a society that's just moving around so much, trying to shift itself up into the perfect alignment so it could finally obtain peace. When the pursuit of happiness is something that is prescribed, as every freaking government that ever shows up in Washington is mandated to make sure stays accessible to everyone. The pursuit of happiness. That it may not be something you're born with, it might be something you have to pursue. But if in your chasing for happiness, the government actions are literally causing stress and oppression and restriction and problems upon you that cannot go away, then that is the change we focus in on. And who made those decisions? What were the characters that decided it was a good idea to print money to pay bills we don't have instead of coming and telling the truth? We put them there. I understand, I'm sure there's a lot of Patriot fans that never thought Tom Brady was going to leave. And then he did. And then they were like, what the hell? Well, Belichick's going to be awesome. Whatever he chooses, we'll keep this legacy going. When you're winning so much, and I love Tom Brady, and I was always, it's quite a spectacle to watch what they put together for 2 decades, the dominance. What team has been to the Super Bowl 10 times? I know Mahomes has been there 5 times. That is so uncommon. It's unbelievable. They almost made it look like it's routine. Super Bowls is probably one of the hardest things to ever get to. And I'm sure the NBA Finals, but there's some teams that get there, usually on a routine basis. Lakers, Celtics, they had a long period of time where they were almost always there. So when you think of when your team, when your country, when you're growing up in something that's just been winning and winning and winning and winning and winning, maybe we fell asleep a little bit. We quit paying attention to make sure that the principles and ethics that made our country great, made us a great people, were still being carried in those we were going to vote for. And a little bit, every election cycle just slipped away a little more. And the problems got a little greater. We started reaching for who could scream more about changing things up the best. And we just said, yeah, we'll just change it. But Tom Brady ain't coming back to the Patriots. And those 10 trips to the Super Bowl are not going to become the norm, and they weren't the norm. And that if the resources that made something great are going to wear out over time, then the experience wears with it. Epstein is a sign that the people that are coming to Washington that say certain things and do different things aren't the people we want there. And that might be wrong. In this one instance, I don't know why exactly whatever files were promised to come forward haven't come forward when there was such close proximity to when these really strong promises were made, and then the decision was made shortly thereafter that they were not going to be released. That can cause us to be suspicious. But what is it really going to do when we know? Let's take away something from that says we need to do better in our lives. We need to refocus that life's happening where our feet are. We need to be, I know it's all the self-help groups, in the moment. There's 2 days a week where nothing can be done. Every week, 2 days. Tomorrow and yesterday. Nothing can be done. Literally nothing. Nothing at all. Want to make America great again. Got someone who ran on that campaign, is busting his ass to make that happen. Flag burning, Epstein, who's perfect? Who? Is that what they ran on? I'm literally the perfect human. Vote for me. You wouldn't trust that if that was their campaign. It would be weird. So, but that's the standard we're going to hold someone to. Let's stop with the distractions and get life back to where we are, because this is your shot on the planet. When you get in your car next, and I've said this before, that's your moon buggy you're driving around. Isn't it funny? You see someone doing it on the moon and it looks so weird and foreign, but that's actually what we're doing here on Earth. This is a planet. I know the moon isn't one, but it's just a small one. But it's a foreign place to be, just like this is. It's so strange when you think people used to think the world was flat because we didn't know. Is that where we're at today? That's what the show's about. The crux, the point of it all. The most important point isn't that some talk show host can come on and help you understand exactly through their powers of speculation why the Epstein files haven't come forward. I know I can't do that. There's a few people that do know why they aren't coming forward. And us screaming for them to do what we want, does that strengthen us or weaken us? And this isn't a self-help group. This is just about recognizing that we don't end up with candidates that we're unimpressed by once they're in office if we are different. Because the money that backs those campaigns wants to be spent on a candidate that is going to win. So they surveil what we're all about. They do all that polling. They get all this data. They start throwing that against who could fit and match the strongest likelihood for the populace to elect that person, so that money gets spent on someone who wins. And that's where you come to understand. The crux of a political campaign is going to be at the point where someone writes a big check, a bunch of big checks, for them to get the ad time they need so you can hear their voice. If they start getting, all they have to do is the money just starts seeing what we're changing toward, and they're going to start looking for candidates that reflect our changing, our evolving back to something greater than what we are now. And we're going to start getting candidates that reflect that. Thomas Jefferson said, you get the government you deserve. I think it was Voltaire that said, could be wrong, someone look it up. But the quote is accurate. Give a man his freedom and he'll give it back to you. I think it was a Jeep commercial. I get my information from all over the place. Stuff sticks to me. Don't hate. Harrison Ford is saying, where was it? It was something online. Harrison Ford was recalling some data point that when groups of people stay under around the 500 number, they all just handle all their troubles themselves. Probably little tribal thing, little, elders and kind of stuff. And they just handle whatever that group needs to overcome or deal with or figure out. Once you get into human beings, groups of 500 or more, and you start electing governments. We could be a country of individuals, even though there's 350 or so million of us here, but individuals with one heartbeat, one American heartbeat, where every day we're celebrating the greatest organization on a piece of dirt on this planet that gives those who come here and those who were lucky enough to be born here a shot at pursuing something so elusive. They wrote about it in a constitution. Happiness. Are you finding happiness as the outcome of you slamming down or yelling at people or talking loud at bars after you've had a few beers about the Epstein frustration? A sick human who duped lots of people. We're going to shame people he did business with over it? Maybe they didn't know. I don't think that's how he started his career, selling memberships to Pedophilia Island. I think he made a shot at a life doing other things, and that was something he ended up doing. I'm not making excuses for him. But if you're standing at, the little town fair or the circus, and they've got that thing where you slam the little lever with a sledgehammer, and you get the slider to go high enough and hit the bell, if you're slamming away and demanding that the government do what you want, and because if they finally do, that little slider hits the bell and happiness is all over your life, you get that happiness thing going on. Well, shit, I wish I had known that that's how it worked. I'll be out there standing next to you, pounding away on that. But I don't think that is how it works. You empower you, that empowers others around you. You seek the clarity where life's actually happening. You recognize maybe you have 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years here. And you recognize this one last piece. Society has switched, humanity, especially here in America, countries that are all about the quarterly earnings report. Profits, how much of this, the growth? What did we make? Is it more than last time? God. So those societies driven by that kind of ethic, we have switched from packing living into the years to a people that packs years into the living. And which one sounds more exciting? When I was a kid, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I made some dumb decisions and I almost signed up with the Navy and then I didn't go in, and we could talk about that on another show. I'm a stupid human sometimes. Literally the dream of my life. And you don't sign up to be a SEAL. You got to go in the Navy and be awesome and apply and then get your shot. But I swear to you, I'll never rung that bell. Never. So if I died on a mission at 26, was my life cut short? It wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been cut short. I was doing what I freaking loved. I was doing something elite that only the top get to do for the greatest country on earth. And I would be respecting and honoring all of those that came and gave up the ultimate sacrifice before me. And I would be part of a brotherhood that was still going to continue growing because of the ones that are going to give their lives up that came after me. So if I did all this stuff and had all this great time and had all these great connections and my family and brother and sister and yada, 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 and I died at 26 doing something I love to do, that would have been a life cut short? No, it would not. That would have been a life fully lived. And that is the ultimate thing that we have lost sight of. The life that was ultimately lived, where the juices of everything are just rolling down your chin because you're just biting into everything. And you're not running through life recklessly, not caring about how long it lasts, but you're focused on the quality of the living, not the length of the years. Cut.